This is what I know. Your powers have been given to you for a reason. Your wisdom, your patience, your loyalty are far more important than you can ever understand. The world needs a hero. And man needs a best friend.
So, you're a cat burglar, huh? Well, I'm not really a cat person. Woof.
Everyone on this planet has a dream. The question is how far you're willing to go to make it come true. Take Lewis, for example.
All right, Lewis, knock him dead. That was a figure of speech. Please don't kill anyone.
All his life, Lewis's dream was to find the family he never knew.
I know they're out there.
But the funny thing about chasing dreams is that no one can do it on their own.
What are you doing up here?
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
And the journey will always take you places you never imagined.
What is this? Where are we going?
To the future!
The first visitor to the future
Wow!
will discover a strange new world and a family
Lewis, meet the Robinsons.
that's even stranger.
Why is your dog wearing glasses?
Oh, because his insurance won't pay for contacts.
Frogs?
Genetically enhanced frogs.
And his only way home
I have to find my family.
We'll help you, kid.
is about to be stolen by a guy who gives evil a bad name.
What the? You are now under my control.
I am now under your control.
Don't repeat everything I say.
I won't repeat everything you say.
This may be harder than I thought.
I haven't had this much fun.
From Walt Disney Pictures,
If I had a family, I'd want them to be just like you.
You have to go back to your own time.
when it comes to adventure,
Dude, I can't take you seriously in that hat.
when it comes to family,
I think my wife Lucille's baking cookies. Bake them cookies, Lucille!
when it comes to comedy,
I've got the caffeine patch. You can stay awake for days with no side effects. Ah! Sorry.
there's no time like the future.
Now my sleeve! Seize the boy! Why aren't you seizing the boy?
Meet the Robinsons.
Get it off! Get it off!
Make it blue.
The big blue. What's it like?
I haven't checked the blue book yet.
Oh, blue.
Back to the big old blue.
I don't think so, babe. This tux is not a blue.
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 Blue, blue, blue.
Blue. Sacre bleu.
Space exploration began with dreaming. Thousands of years of humans staring into the heavens and wondering, how did this begin?
Mars has always had a special place in the human imagination. It's not like the other planets. What sets Mars apart is how sort of Earth-like it is. It's enough like home that we can imagine life evolving there. We can imagine ourselves going there and living someday. Nobody's going to think that about Venus or Mercury or Pluto.
Our solar system, Mars and Earth, were started at the same time. They're both 4.5 billion years old. But they've had very different stories. They've led very different lives. But early on, Mars might have been as habitable for the formation of early life as Earth itself.
Mars has these special traits of being really unknown and different and exciting, but similar enough that we can imagine it as an abode for life. And that makes it a unique and special place in the solar system.
Well, I think for me, when you mention the word Mars, it brings up several different concepts and ideas and mythologies. I first saw it as a filmmaker when I had heard about Orson Welles doing the War of the Worlds. When I was growing up, that was one of the most amazing events that I can remember, because the whole world believed in something that was made up, that maybe the Martians were the bad guys and they were coming. And it was interesting that Orson, and H.G. Wells took Mars because it is close and it is a possibility of maybe having life on it. So Mars has always been a big concept, I think, in movies.
Yeah, there was aliens from Mars. There was these little things that were going to come and attack us and eat us and all these other bad things, or the Twilight Zone and all these, how to cook a human and that kind of thing. So there was some preconceived notions as a young child.
Space has always been interesting. Literature about other worlds, even the movies, the TV show, like Star Wars, Star Trek, that has captivated so many people, including myself. I do love the Star Wars series and all of just all the science fiction stuff.
I think my first memory of real space and being really connected to the space program was when I was about 10, I guess, 10 or 12. My mom came in and said, come on out, we're going to get on the roof and we're going to watch a satellite fly over. And I said, what's a satellite? And she said, well, the Russians have put a satellite up and it's circling the Earth. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And we got up and we sat on the roof and we watched Sputnik go over.
I always loved robots, but robots and space exploration and astronauts and the whole vision of space as was portrayed in the 1950s, 1960s, and especially with the Apollo astronauts going to the moon. It was so enticing for a young kid.
I remember in school, in elementary school, during the 60s, during the Apollo program, there would be times during the school day, on a particular day, that they would stop class and then they would wheel in these very large, old black and white TVs with rabbit ears. And we would watch an Apollo Saturn V launch or some other significant event that was going on. And then, of course, when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, I remember actually going outside and looking up at the moon and wondering if I could see the astronauts.
All right, you do have to be rather careful to keep track of where your center of mass is.
And they often say that people make choices about technical careers at a very early age, and I would say I was very much influenced by the space program during those early years. So it's no surprise that I'm where I am now.
I was very fortunate to be in college at the time of the Viking mission to Mars back in the mid to late 70s. And in my third year of college, I took a course on the results of the Viking mission. And I came out of that course knowing exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
I had just returned from the Antarctic in early 2001, where I'd been making a film on Ernest Shackleton. But I was in the editing room, and my wonderful editor, Tim Squires, who was editing the Shackleton IMAX, I believe he was in a conversation with his brother, Steve Squires, and I heard something about sending IMAX quality cameras to Mars. Instantly, absolutely instantly, I knew that I was interested in making a film.
The mission arose out of a series of proposals that a team of scientists that I led submitted to NASA. NASA liked it, and then they liked it so much they decided to fly two, which stunned everybody at the time. Between when NASA said go and when we had to be on top of the launch pad in Florida was 34 months.
George Butler called me on the phone and he said, what if I told you that they were sending 2 rovers to Mars and they were going to have IMAX quality cameras? I said, I'm in. I don't care what it is. If you're doing it and we've got IMAX, I'm in. So that's how it kind of started. And then the job was to sell this concept to the folks at Disney because we had to start before the rovers went. And they saw the potential for this, that if we had this footage and the mission was successful, that we could have a really fabulous movie and documentary. And it's been successful beyond our wildest dreams.
The point at which George got the funding that he needed to actually begin shooting was when we were in Florida, at Cape Canaveral with our rovers, getting ready to go. And we were in desperate trouble. We were behind schedule, our budget was very tough, we had technical problems that looked like they might prevent us from even launching. And this movie crew shows up. And they got a truck, and they got people, and they got a camera the size of a washing machine, and they want to come in and make a movie.
We have these giant IMAX cameras in these rooms where guys are walking around with hairnets and white suits and booties on, and because one speck of dust or one piece of lint that gets into one of these rovers, that's not going to work. So people at JPL and NASA had that to overcome.
And the NASA scientists were absolutely terrified when they saw our crane come into the room where the rovers were being assembled, simply because they were terrified that somewhere along the line we'd bump into a rover. But that never happened, and we quickly proved our ability to work around delicate equipment.
And then George did a really smart thing. At Cape Canaveral, there is an IMAX theater. And at the time of the Spirit launch, when everybody on the project were there with their families and so forth, there was a screening at that time, not only of George's previous IMAX film about Ernest Shackleton, but he also screened, very nicely edited with a music soundtrack, about 6 or 7 minutes of the footage that he had shot so far.
So the scientists literally stood up and roared with applause at the end of the screening, and it just made all of my work so much more easy because they kind of now knew that they could trust my eye. Secondly, by sheer good fortune, Dr. Charles Salachi, the head of JPL, was at the screening and said, we must try to work together on this project because you can translate what we're doing to the American public.
This time, NASA decided to send 2 identical spacecraft to double our chances of success. The 2 rovers are named Spirit and Opportunity. The names actually came from a program that NASA ran where they invited school children around the country to suggest pairs of names for the rovers. And there were, I don't know, I think tens of thousands of names that were suggested. Then they eventually pared it down to a few finalists, and they finally settled on Spirit and Opportunity. The names were suggested by a girl named Sophie Collis, and she's an interesting story. She had originally been born in Russia and had spent the first several years of her life in an orphanage in Russia, and then she had been adopted by an American family, and she chose those names as sort of a way of acknowledging the feelings that she felt about being able to come to America and begin a new life here.
You know, I remember when we first started doing some of the configuration work, and, you know, it's one of these sort of Russian dolls. It folds and folds, and it fits inside it, so it has this interesting look to it in general. And then when it opens up, it almost looks like a bug. You know, it sort of looks like this beetle with its wings out or something. And that sort of starts us into that, giving it a personality, that humanizing of these robots.
One of my fondest experiences on this project so far was during development. We had the rovers almost completely built down in our spacecraft assembly facility, and they were powered up and they were under various electrical tests. But we had the engineers working 2 shifts. And so what we needed was a third shift, which would just be what we called a skeleton shift, which a single person would just sit and monitor the rovers during the night while the engineers went home, got some sleep. So I volunteered to take some of those skeleton shifts, and for me, those were wonderful experiences. The thing that's special about it is you're alone with the rovers. The rovers are sitting in the clean room. You can think of it as a maternity ward at a hospital. And these are these little babies. They're in there. They're connected up to all kinds of life support equipment. And so while the rovers slept, in a sense, I made sure that they were doing okay. And so I found that I bonded with them, if you will, that these were sort of living things.
For those of us who build it, it's almost as though they are extensions of ourselves, and they're really not separable. So it's that connected emotional and technical connection that we have with these vehicles that make them so much a part of who we are, and vice versa.
I wish I could tell you that I was 100% confident, highly confident. I was nervous. You know, I thought our chances were good. I thought they were much better than 50-50. I thought they were better than most people thought they were because I knew the team that had built those rovers.
I was scared. I think all of us were. The fact that we were doing something so rapidly, and as an engineer, your brain, your body, your aura, everything about you is to worry and to say, what didn't I do? What didn't I fix? What didn't we test? What did we miss?
There is a fundamental risk associated with that moment of landing where even the perfect landing system, one sharp, pointy rock in just the wrong place or one ill-timed gust of wind, and everything you worked for is gone, and there's nothing you can do.
And when they were waiting for the first rover to land, we all sat in this room out in JPL, and you could hear a pin drop. Years of work, thousands of people coming together for this one moment, to wait for the signal that came from Mars to say they had landed. And it was amazing. It was so suspenseful, I can't even describe it.
The most exciting time, and the time that people really remember communication, is as we were descending onto the surface of the planet. For entry, descent, and landing, we had to use the Mars Global Surveyor. That radio was built by the French for a Russian sonde, which never was actually put on the spacecraft. So that radio system had never been used by anything on the surface of Mars. And the first signal from the spacecraft means that all is okay, that the spacecraft is performing well, all systems are up.
We don't see a signal at the moment. Right.
When you look at the scenes in the film, the fear in our faces, the tension, was very real.
And my heart was in my throat, your heart is pounding, your stomach is churning, these people are there, they're wishing, and then the release, when they got that first signal, was extraordinary.
We've got the signal!
yeah, you can say it felt like winning a Super Bowl or it felt like this or that, but the scene in the movie that shows the elation in the faces says it better than my words ever could.
I think it's what gives the film the emotional power, because you suddenly realize when you see the scientists going gaga on the screen at the landing, how much was at stake and how much future had been opened by this successful landing.
The thing that I loved about the film was the accuracy of the depictions. And this is something that I think most viewers aren't going to realize. But George and his team put an enormous amount of effort into very rigorously showing with enormous accuracy what happened on the surface of Mars.
Obviously, once the rocket launched, we could not follow the rocket through space. You just can't film anymore, so we animated it.
Even though we had these spectacular shots of the Martian landscape, we thought that it would be cool to also show what the rovers were doing and how they were operating, because we just didn't want to always have their POVs. So we did have computer animation, which was done by a wonderful animator named Dan Moss. And what he did, which I think makes it real, he only worked off of specific information and specific data that's being sent back by the rovers. So when you see the inflated bouncing ball that has the rover in it, that's exactly what happened. That's an exact recreation of what happened on Mars. The height, the number of bounces that is sent back by the rovers. So you're seeing a total recreation of what happened there, and it's not a guesstimate. When they open up, how they opened up, where they went, that first rock that they steered to, that's all exactly right. And then when you cut to what they're seeing, you're really seeing it. So then when you put everything together, when you put these amazing images coming from Mars, this incredible animation, the enthusiasm and passion of the scientists, great Philip Glass music, you have this amazing marriage of art and science.
These rovers were designed to last only 90 Mars days, and they've already done many times that. They've developed personalities. They're workhorses. They say, push us, ask us to do more. We can go further, we can go faster.
I pitched the movie to my friends at Disney, and when I pitched it, I said, you know, we can have the movie done by this date because the rovers are only going to last 90 days. So, 3 months after that, we'll know, and we have an ending to our movie, and because they're sort of personalized now, it'll be like they were born, and they did their job, and then they've died. And so that was going to be the end of the movie. Well, they kept going, and they kept going, and they kept going. And so I called George. I said, George, he said, well, I don't have my ending. I said, well, let's try and get a new ending that talks about how great it is that they're going on. And he thought about it, and he wrote this new wonderful ending about how man is moving forward. And we've always been interested in frontiers and seeing what's out there beyond us. And now we're really doing it. And that's what's so great about the space program and about the success of this program.
The rovers have lasted a long time for several reasons. One is we built good hardware, okay, and we're proud of that. The other thing is for both vehicles, surviving the winter is hard because what happens is the sun goes very low in the sky. We're in the southern hemisphere of Mars, so the sun goes low in the northern sky. And what we've been able to do with both vehicles is in the winter, drive them onto slopes, mountains, craters, hillsides, where we can tilt the solar panels to the north, towards the sun, and soak up more power that way. And we've survived 2 Martian winters with both vehicles that way. So it's been a combination of good hardware and good luck.
Mars has been very cooperative. It could have easily been that there was another big dust storm that would have covered the vehicle, and that's sort of the end of it. So we've been really lucky in a lot of ways that Mars has cooperated with these vehicles, exploring and finding some of her secrets.
Now stay clear, watch it. Stay clear of this thing, because it's going to move in a second. Watch the wheels, watch the wheels.
It goes way beyond this single mission.
See that?
The eventual goal is to send humans to Mars.
Another exciting thing for me is the thought that some of the kids that are in our movie and some kid out there today could be the person that goes to Mars. It's not going to be one of us, but it's going to be someone from a younger generation.
I mean, this is the first time, really, that we've had a chance to see these images that are so amazing. And when I saw these images for the first time, my imagination just went crazy, because I'd never seen anything like it before. And so that's exactly what we do with the project Imagine Mars, is we bring these images and this knowledge and all the discoveries of the rovers to the students and to the young people across the country, and ask them what they think of this. What can they imagine the future of Mars to be like based on what they see?
Basically, it's a project that revolved around us designing living conditions for the first 100 people going to Mars. And basically, they're cut off from Earth for 2 years. And we have to solve the problem of them living there, existing there, and pretty much keeping them alive in a suitable condition. Not luxurious, but, livable. Personally, I made living quarters. I was doing kind of like the hotel-esque thing. I did go a bit into the science fiction part, where a lot of movies you see, they'll have biodomes. And I was making little places where maybe 4 or 5 families would live in one dome. That was easy to set up, easy to maintain, blocks out radiation, the soil, and basically as many aspects as I could find that would challenge the people there.
We have students who actually look at it from the context of landscape architects. What would it be like to actually design a garden there? And what's the role of a garden anyway? Why do we appreciate the gardens here on Earth?
The class that we took at the college was called Gardens on Mars, and we designed a site-specific garden for Mars. And basically, we started from a blank page. We drew drawings on the chalkboard, and we traced them, and we had lectures from engineers. We went to the Huntington Gardens, and we studied plants and learned about how they worked, so that we'd get an idea of, for people to be living there, what are they going to want when they go to this place for 2 or 3 years? What do they need from this environment? What can give them a reminder of home? So the end result, we came up with a suspended geodesic dome, and inside of it was a multi-layered garden. It was all self-contained, and we basically constructed the dome and the supports and how we wanted it to come together inside.
What questions do you got? Are the human beings going to go to these sites?
We need the material of the tires, so it'll be able to move on Mars.
Okay, so the material needs to be able to be compatible with transportation or motion on Mars. And there's something about looking into space, looking at planetary bodies and looking at rovers on the surface that excites young people and excites new explorers and new ideas. That's definitely an option.
With imagination, with new ideas, with technology, and with drive, and with knowledge, we can go to Mars.
Well, one of the things that's really significant about these rovers is they've given us a virtual presence on Mars. So the information we're getting back from the rovers is very much as if we were standing on Mars ourselves taking pictures.
What have we learned from going there? What do we now understand about this sister planet of ours? And really, our burning question always is it possible to have life on Mars? And now, in the past month, we've heard that most likely water flowed on the surface of Mars within the last 6 years.
We're just discovering this information now from our orbiters from space. And if that's the case, maybe there are single-cell organisms living under the ground. Well, why do we care? So what? So there's bugs on Mars. Well, what if this? What if we were able to go to Mars and study them in enough detail to realize whether or not those organisms were like us? But what if they were very different? That means that life evolved on Mars independently of Earth, and that life is something that might be ubiquitous, not just in our solar system, but around our whole universe. And that is ultimately the story we're trying to get to.
A mission like this causes us to evaluate what our true capabilities are. I don't mean just as individuals or just as a team, but as a society. This kind of mission is at the very limit of what we as a species are capable of doing right now.
There's certainly something magic about all of this. You know, people have been trying to figure out what was on Mars from the length of the human existence on Earth. So it's almost an atavistic quest. And by gum, the scientists from JPL and NASA have told us about what's on Mars, and we now know a great deal more.
It's a very Disney-like story in that it's when you wish upon a star, your dreams can come true, and they did.
Walt Disney's Disneyland.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are.
Each week as you enter this timeless land, one of these many worlds will open to you. Frontierland. Tall tales and true from the legendary past. Tomorrowland. Promise of things to come. Adventureland. The wonder world of nature's own realm. Fantasyland. The happiest kingdom of them all. Presenting this week, coming to motion picture theaters soon, Old Yeller, a rare entertainment experience. From the deeply moving story of Fred Gibson's best-selling novel comes a new Walt Disney motion picture, sure to touch the hearts of everyone, everywhere. Old Yeller, the thrilling story of a remarkable Texas family and an old Yeller dog who made a habit of saving their lives. Old Yeller, co-starring Dorothy McGuire and Fess Parker. And Old Yeller himself, friend when he wanted to be, fighting fool when he had to be. Walt Disney's dramatic new movie, Old Yeller, coming to motion picture theaters soon. This has been an ABC Television Network film presentation.